good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Upload VR Download, our weekly podcast. Actually, twice weekly now, because this is the first in our two sets of shows that we do now. On Thursday, we're going to be doing gaming shows, and on Monday, we're going to be doing kind of industry/hardware stuff. I'm your host, Jamie Feldman, for today, and joining me is the one, the only, the main person that lives where David lives, David Jagner.
This is the good show. The boring show's on Monday.
This is something we're going to be trying for a while. On Thursdays, you'll be getting mainly me and David. We'll have a third person come in every now and again, specifically if they want to talk about different games and stuff like that. And then on Monday, Ian and Kyle, I believe, will be talking about all that boring Facebook stuff that no one really cares about. Meanwhile, in the video game universe, David, what you doing at the moment? How are you? It's good to see you.
You know what? It's good to see you too. It's been a week. You know, it's been a long week.
Let's high five
here on my side of the ocean. It's been quite a long week already, and it feels like this week's been going on for a very long time. But yeah, I mean, overall, in terms of the gaming world, the VR world, I'm pretty happy. You know, right now, I think we're in for a good holiday season. In terms of video games in general, but for VR, which is what this show is about, I think it's going to be interesting. You know, it's going to be interesting. I can't say too much yet about the PlayStation 5. The review embargo has not lifted. The Xbox Series X and S review embargo lifted today. So if you're curious about what other non-VR gaming sites thought about that console, you can go check that out.
About it.
The boring, non-VR people out there in the world.
Pancake gamers, we call them.
But exactly. I think at this point I can say that you will be able to read my review of the PS5 from a VR perspective tomorrow. That will be live on the site tomorrow. And I'll be streaming here on our YouTube channel, talking about it, answering questions. I won't be able to show any PS5 VR gameplay tomorrow during the stream. That's still under embargo until next week. But I'm thinking maybe I'll play some Astrobot Rescue Mission. You know, the 3D platformer that is an excellent PSVR exclusive. It has a sequel on the PS5 that is a non-VR game that comes free with every PS5. So I could actually play that some too if I wanted, but it's not a VR game. So I was thinking tomorrow maybe I'll talk about my review, answer questions about the console while playing Astrobot from the PS4. It's not a PS5 game, but it's it's close enough. It's related, very closely related.
Bit of throwback.
Yeah, and then outside of that, I played a little bit of In Death on the Quest 2. A little underrated. I don't feel like it gets quite enough credit for being as good as it is.
It's a tough one. It's a tough game. I guess the reason you played it this week is it's got the Quest 2 patch, right? So it's coming out with some new enhancements. The original Quest 1 version, which seems like a pretty significant list of updates. Ironically, so we've had a couple of bugs that have actually prevented us from checking out the new version ourselves, but from the materials developer Superbright provided, it's stuff like increased draw distance because the game loads the entire world now when you start a run. I think it's interesting you say
which is a cool concept.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting that you say it's kind of overlooked. I feel like there's a lot of VR roguelikes coming about right now. So we have this, we have Until You Fall, we have Star Shaman, which is basically a roguelike. And then actually something else roguelike-ish got announced today or yesterday, but it escapes my mind right now. And I feel like the roguelike genre is really providing the kind of meaty replayability that a lot of people really want in VR right now. And I do think that In Death is a really rock solid example of that. Personally, my favorite in roguelite is Until You Fall. I think Until You Fall is really, really good.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Until You Fall is probably the overall best VR roguelike out there right now. I really liked Persistence a lot, going back to the PSVR. I believe that game's on PC VR now as well. It also has a non-VR version out. I really liked Persistence quite a lot because I'm a big horror fan. So that's almost like a mixture of stealth and shooter and horror all combined together into a roguelike. So it was a pretty cool concept, and I liked it quite a bit. Other than that, I've been obviously playing a lot of PSVR stuff on PS5 that I can't talk about yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be able to talk about it tomorrow and in depth. And that's really about it. There hasn't been anything super new other than that's been on my radar at the moment. I know there are some new releases today that actually look quite good. Some ports of some non-VR games that I think we're going to be talking about a little bit later.
Yeah,
but since you're the host today, I'll let you guide us here.
I will steer this ship. I will guide us on this amazing journey that we're about to undertake. I do want to just stay on that subject just before we move on, because you said it's an interesting time at the start of the podcast, and I agree, because I really feel like Quest 2 is out, and it's fantastic, and I love it. But there's not a lot happening right now in terms of releases, right? Like, and we're going to talk about a few, but they're not big titles. And we've got what we got coming up. We've got Medal of Honor. We've got like a couple of games on Quest that you can pre-order now, like Jurassic World and The Climb 2. But in terms of like a major new, yes, exactly. Myst is another big one. In terms of a major headset launch, it feels kind of weird. We don't know what's coming when. We get like these kind of drops every like week, or maybe if we're lucky, like a month ahead of time, we get the news that something's coming. So
I mean, it's what is it? It's November right now, and like all those games you mentioned, we don't really know dates for any of them other than Medal of Honor, and that's a PC VR only game. And you published a list here this week on the site at uploadvr.com of a bunch of PSVR games that look promising. Majority of those are ports, so it's like, it's. Well, what really is there as a big new exciting title other than Medal of Honor and Lone Echo 2? Like, those are the two kind of big ones that we're looking forward to at the moment. And for the Quest, for the Quest ecosystem, it's interesting because obviously we just got Population 1, which I still need to review it. I'm going to. I've been so swamped with other things that it's fallen by the wayside a little bit. But can you believe? I realized this recently, and it blew my mind. Can you believe Star Wars Squadrons just came out like a month ago?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's been, and it's weird because of how weird of a month October has been, where there actually hasn't been that much to play in terms of VR. But that still feels so long ago, I guess, is what I feel. Or do you feel like it's really fast?
No, it feels forever ago. Like, I feel like Star Wars Squadrons is such a distant memory for me at this point, but it is only a month ago, and it's crazy, and it's crazy to see we have these three core ecosystems, right, with the Quest, the PSVR, and PCVR, and they're all going in such different directions. You have PCVR, which is still very, very hardware focused, with the G2 coming out. You have Quest 2 is kind of the new PC headset with the link connection and virtual desktop. You've got, the Deca Gear headset on the horizon.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of like new tech to look forward to. And then Quest is more kind of becoming kind of the, more steady release platform where you get a few games that are noteworthy every month. And then PSVR is kind of in limbo at the moment, so it's really interesting to see where the and just it's interesting how different they are right now, because I feel like around a year ago it felt like there's almost like parity. Like, you had games that were coming out on all three, you had games that were kind of getting ported across quickly, and it was almost like they're on the same playing field. But now the different paths are very different.
Well, so let's get into that, right? Just before we do, let's say hi to everyone in chat. Thanks for being here today, guys. Adam Hertel, good to see you. Electronic Cheese, good. Thanks for stopping by, even if it was brief, but great name. Guys are talking a bit about whether they should get like Quest 2 or a PS5. Again, if you want to stick around, we will be talking a bit about that later on. We'll get into the PS5 discussion a bit more with some of the stuff we've confirmed earlier in the week. But I'm glad you talked about like kind of release parity in there, because we have two items on our news list this week, which I think kind of speak to that a little bit. And one of them is new titles that were confirmed for Quest this week, and the other one is new titles that have either come to VR or are coming to VR, SteamVR this week. So on Quest, we have Prison Boss, which is coming in December, Spheres, which we don't have a release date, and something called Yuki, which was announced today from the developers of, what do they do? Pixel Ripped. So three titles there. One's a port, well, two of them are ports, and one of them's an all-new game. And I feel like you then take the SteamVR list, which is this thing called Rezel, which is a kind of soccer. I have to say soccer because our audience is mainly American, which hurts me inside. It's like a soccer training simulation.
A bit of footy, eh?
Oh yes, a bit of football, as we call it. So I'm in that voice often, actually. Which is it's a training simulator. I feel like this is one of those kind of COVID things where they had this. It used to be this big professional application, and they've released a SteamVR version, probably to get extra funds because of what's happening to location-based everything at the moment. House Flipper VR came out on SteamVR today, which is a port from a Quest game that came out a couple of weeks ago, and then there's Thief Simulator VR, which was an early access game for the longest time, right, and is now out in full. Two interesting lists of games there, I think, because I look at the Quest list and I get a bit more excited, I think. I feel like Quest is becoming home to a lot of these kind of... It's like if you come to Quest, you've made it almost, right? Like that is what proves you to be a legitimate VR title. It's starting to feel, mainly because of the strict curation that Facebook itself imposes. Whereas on SteamVR, things still feel quite sparse and randomized and weird.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I do think if you look forward to the future on PC VR, really all that's coming to mind for me right now is Medal of Honor, which is obviously huge. But in terms of Quest, I feel like the stuff I look forward to, especially now that Facebook is doing full Quest exclusives, is a much more exciting list. So you've got, like I said earlier, like you've got Jurassic World, you've got like a Port of Gorn coming, you've got what was the other game I mentioned earlier? Some other game. The Climb 2, that's it.
Yeah.
Climb 2 and Myst. Yeah, I keep forgetting Myst. Shout out to Myst. Got a bit of mist here in the studio right now, by the way. I'm enjoying it. Very misty. Very cool.
Yeah,
it's actually liking,
the
but I just
fog
can't tell.
effect is... Yeah.
We should, do you know what we should do? We should try and get Quest 1 versus Quest 2 comparisons of the Upload VR studio going. If there are any. Heaney God, if you've made any of those, we should put our own comparison between those together. But anyway, so yeah, out of these games, so Prison Boss on Quest, Spheres, which isn't a game, by the way, I should say. That's more like a short film, which I really, really love. I think you've seen Spheres too, right? Or you've seen some of Spheres.
Oh yeah, I love Spheres. It was incredible. It's basically like a semi-narrative, there's a loose, narration on top of the experience, but it's mostly just like a visual, bombardment on your eyeballs and ears of what it would be like to be there whenever two black holes collide. That's essentially the premise, and the narration is just, it's so wonderful. I think it's Jessica Chastain. I think it's who does the narration, and
yeah, it's different. There's 3 chapters, and it's different people for each chapter. And Jessica Chastain's one of them.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, great! I've only seen the first chapter, so I've got to see the rest of it. I'm pretty excited now. It's incredible. It's one of those things that, like, I think is a great example of something that is like, it wouldn't even make sense to experience it outside of VR. It wouldn't do anything for you. You have to see it inside of a headset, and it's just fantastic.
It's so hypnotic. I reviewed it. I think I reviewed it late last year because it came out on Rift late last year. And it's a really, well, hypnotic's the only word for it, really. It really fully immerses you in these different intergalactic environments. It studies these different phenomena. Like at one point you see the Big Bang. At one point you study black holes and you get sucked into a black hole. Mm-hmm. And it's one of...
Millie Bobby Brown's one of the voices? Yep. I didn't know that.
It's so just powerful and quite poetic, quite creative. Actually, it's not just the straight-faced documentary. There is light interaction. In fact, the Quest version is going to have hand tracking, which I think is very cool.
Ooh, and nice.
Yeah, I think in my review back in 2019, I said something like finding something artsy fartsy, like finding poetry in the symphony of the universe or something like that. But
oh God.
I love Spheres, and we don't know when it's coming out, but it's up on the coming soon section of the Quest store. So I would hope in the next couple of weeks, maybe even today, because usually there's a drop of new content on a Thursday. So maybe there's something new on the Quest store that we should check in a bit. Moving on from Spheres, there is something that was announced today called Yuki, which is from the developers of Pixel Ripped, is a bullet hell shooter that is coming to Quest, PC VR in the first half of next year, and PSVR in the second half of next year. Really, really interesting game because it plays on the same idea we've seen in a lot of kind of arcade shoot 'em ups in VR. You take like a ship, you control it with one of your hand controllers, and then you like navigate a level, making it dodge out of the way of bullets and returning fire itself. Got it here on the screen here. But the way it's framed is actually kind of weirdly similar to Pixel Ripped in a lot of ways. So the idea is that you actually just pick up an action in your bedroom, and you're doing like pretend playtime, going back in time and like just playing with your imagination in some ways. And that's a very Arvor, the team that made Pixel Ripped, that's a very them thing to do, because Pixel Ripped is all about traveling back in time and celebrating old eras of gaming and your childhood and really embracing that. So mechanically, I think we've seen this before, but I do love the idea of like framing it as, go pick up your old action figures and bring playtime to life. I think is a really, really cute idea.
That's cool. And it's why, speaking of new stuff on the Quest store, I did just check, and VTime XR came out today.
Oh, that's today. That's a social network, not too unlike this. That's like sitting up to like 5 or 6 people in a circle, unlike Rec Room or Altspace or Facebook Horizons, what you do is you sit in a corner. Or any kind of environment, really nice little environments like this woodland one we're seeing. If you're watching along with us,
I think some of them are some of the pre-made ones are quite nice, and I believe you can even use your own 360 photos as well, kind of like Facebook Spaces did.
Yeah, and then you can share some video content. I think they try and pitch it around kind of virtual professional meetings sometimes as well. I like the idea of kind of limiting what you can do with social VR and like restricting you to sitting down, because it just kind of accepts what the limitations of the platform right now and works with those instead of saying like trying to simulate all of reality, right? So I think that's a pretty cool idea. I don't know how much this has been around for donkey's years. The VTime, it was made in Liverpool in the UK.
There's logos down there at the end of the trailer for Google Play Store and iOS. So I'm wondering, it must be cross-platform, between PC, Quest, mobile.
There's an AR platform version of it as well on mobile, I think. So you can join in very strange ways. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Over on SteamVR, so we've got Rezel. We like we talked about, although that's strange. You're going to need 2 Vive trackers for that, which it's 2020. I'm not sure how many people have Vive trackers anymore. You can still buy them if you want, and then use them with your Index or your, I guess your original Vive, but not the Vive Cosmos unless you have the Vive Cosmos Elite. So that's interesting. I would like to check that out, but I don't have trackers. House Flipper, I know you think is a pretty cool idea. Just the idea of like renovating a virtual space without the mess, but then not actually getting to live in it.
Yeah. I mean, so some of you watching or listening might have heard references that I'm in the middle of kind of a limbo between moving and our new home. My wife and I have a new house that's being built right now,
You're
and we're living
between
with
spaces.
I am, and we're living with my wife's parents right now, which is interesting. It's interesting, and so we didn't have to renovate our house. There wasn't, like we didn't flip a house or anything. We lived in that house for like 3.5 years and we sold it. And so our new house is being built. But there are some, allegories with it because, like watching the trailer, there's lots of decorating and cleaning you do. And it's funny how like things that I don't ever want to do in real life suddenly become novel concepts for a VR game that kind of looks fun,
It's the Simpsons joke, right? Like every time you see VR in the Simpsons, it's like virtual lawn simulator or something like that, and it's 100% true.
Yeah, or like in Rick and Morty, the Roy, A Life Well Lived, where he's like, what do you mean you beat cancer and you went back to the carpet store? That doesn't make any sense.
Clean. Adam Hartzell said this looks like clean your damn room VR, which fair enough. That's a very good, good explanation of it.
Whoa, you got a Thor hammer? Oh my god!
Yeah,
okay. If you're listening to the audio version, you have a rubber mallet that you can hit the wall with to do things, and you can also throw it like Thor, and it comes back to you. That was pretty interesting.
Mjolnir, the mighty hammer of home renovation. And the last game on SteamVR is actually something very similar to this in some ways, which is Thief Simulator, which I still haven't tried, and I really want to go and check out, especially seeing as it's one of those early access games that actually did early access and has now come out on the other side. Just released early access.
Now that it's out fully. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to try that. Maybe we could do something with that later in the week because I feel like there's some antics to be had there, some shenanigans, as they say.
Yeah, that would be a good one to stream maybe on Monday. That would be a good Monday game. Or I mean Tuesday next week. Yeah.
Maybe I won't play it, seeing as now that we're back in lockdown in the UK, the idea of a thief sneaking in, home invasion, probably not the best genre for me right now. Moving on.
A little too close to home.
Moving on to another Quest game that we've been talking recently. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of chatting with the team in the UK called Pixel Toys. They are making Warhammer 40k Battle Sister, which is coming to Quest very, very soon. Also behind Drop Dead, which I know a lot of people out there really, really enjoyed. So that's cool. I chatted with them for a little while. I got some new details that will be going live on the site throughout the next couple of days. One of the stories I put live today is that it's coming out on in December is when they're aiming for it. Quest first, Rift next, and then other platforms hopefully in the future. Pretty interested in this one. This is, if you watched the show last week, you'll know we were talking about another Warhammer game called Tempestfall from Carbon Games, which is set in an entirely different universe. This one's set in the, proper Warhammer's so confusing, man. The proper 40k universe that everyone really, really likes. I've played a demo of it a couple of months ago now, back before the embargo on Quest 2 had lifted. And I was really impressed by the scope of it. It had some technical difficulties that still needed working out, so I'm glad to hear they're taking till December instead of November.
Yeah, I mean, to be like perfectly honest, like Warhammer is one of those franchises that is so incredibly intimidating to me because growing up, I never got into the tabletop, miniature game.
Oh, dude,
I was more of a D&D type of person. I've never really gotten into the lore. I've never read any of the novels. I've played Vermintide just because it's just like a wave killing game, so it was kind of accessible. Like but yeah, Vermintide 2 is fantastic, and so I mean, it's one of those franchises. It's like I kind of understand, like there's space marines and there's like I guess other creatures and enemies, and I don't know the lore. I don't have any attachment to it, so like I'm watching this footage, it just looks like a generic shooter. Like now, what if I don't have attachment to the lore, like what does this do for me? Like what sets it apart?
Now take that mindset and consider that I had to interview them yesterday, and they were just listing off characters and enemy designs and weapon types, and I was like, cool. I will say though, like the thing about
like Battle Sister, is that like a designation? Is that a rank?
It's a faction of characters,
for whatever.
A faction of soldiers, and you play as one of them specifically. And you play as like I guess protege of one of them. And they're promising a full like 5 to 6 hour single player campaign, visiting a couple of different planets, which sounds pretty cool. They're also saying that they're going to have hopefully some like cooperative horde mode multiplayer, if not at launch, like then maybe a bit after. And then they also really want to do expanded multiplayer modes maybe in the new year, which would be really, really, really cool to see. I do think to that point about like not knowing much about Warhammer, though, in terms of the 40K universe with the big, huge Chaos Marines, right? That is something you don't have to be familiar with to think it would be cool to play as one of them and get your hands on that, like, you know, that big hulking machinery that universe is really known for. Those weapons are huge and chunky.
Yeah.
And that's something that I spoke to them about, because you know there's a disconnect between picking up a controller in VR and then if it would actually feel like that giant kind of gun with a chainsaw on it that they've got. Look for that later in the week. Full interview I think will be going live this weekend, but gonna have a couple more stories on it. I'm pretty optimistic about this one because it's, like I said, it's coming to Quest first, and it's just cool to play first-person shooters on Quest, and I'm hoping that we'll get something cool there.
Yeah, and you know, like if you look at VR, even outside of Quest, if you look at, you know, PSVR and PC and everything, almost every game that is at its core a shooter is either a wave game or a multiplayer game. There's just not very many VR shooters that actually have campaigns.
Yeah,
there's just very few of them, and I don't know why that is. You know, I mean, obviously you have Walking Dead, you have on PSVR, you have Farpoint, you have Persistence, which kind of has a story to it. You have there's a few on PC, like Zero Caliber tries to kind of do that, but you know, it's such a weird, you know, gap, because I feel like outside of VR, that's like the biggest genre there is. You know, like the first person shooter. You know, like where it's so strange because we don't have like a narrative, or not even narrative. Just get rid of the idea of there having to be characters and voice acting. Just like a campaign with missions. You know, like objectives. Like there's just not very many of those in VR.
And if you, I mean, there is a correlation if you look at the games you just listed off there. So you said Farpoint. That is a game that was funded and published by Sony. Obviously, they at that time they wanted to tick that box and say yes, we have kind of a Halo style shooter on PSVR. Then you look at
shout out to G Dog in the chat, Arizona Sunshine. I forgot to list that one. That was
that's very
one
true.
of the first ones. Yeah,
but outside of Arizona, and that's a great one to mention. You've got 2 Warhammer games coming up. We've had 2 Walking Dead games. The next single player campaign coming out on Quest will probably be that Jurassic World game. They're all tie-ins because those are the companies that are funding these VR games right now, and there's something really interesting about that.
That's a good point. Obviously, Half-Life, you know, like
but yeah, and you know, if you're lucky, you'll get VR support in Squadrons from EA. But EA aren't going to set out to make their own dedicated VR game at the moment. Right, and that is interesting. It does mean we're getting this interesting type of tie-in that we're starting to see more in VR, almost than we see in video games right now, right? Because Jurassic World, there hasn't really been many big Jurassic World video games. There's the theme park simulator one, but I can't think of like a first-person, like big budget blockbuster survival Jurassic World game that's come out for a console in a long time. And I feel like we're seeing other industries outside of gaming look at VR and say, okay, well, let's not think about this necessarily as like entering the gaming market, but what could we take like the most iconic cinematic elements of our franchise and put them into a interactive virtual experience that will really connect with potentially even more people than they would on console, right?
Yeah. I think it wasn't really a shooter, but a really good example of how VR is kind of becoming the new breeding ground for IP tie-ins was Westworld Awakening. That was fantastic. And Survios is interesting. They've kind of become this sort of dev studio that specializes in IP, adaptations with, obviously you've got Creed, you've got Westworld, you've got Walking Dead Onslaught now. I'm sure they're probably working on other stuff as well. And they, it's interesting because I personally really enjoy a good quality tie-in game. You know, like I'm one of those people that's like, if it's a movie or a book or a TV show that I love, playing a game based on it, to me, even if it's not a great game, you know, like if it's a 5 or a 6 out of 10 quality game, just being able to have it attached to an IP I love automatically elevates it for me, just because I like being in that universe. And then you put it in VR where you're actually literally in it. It's just, you know, it's even better. So I mean, it totally makes sense that we're seeing a resurgence in tie-in experiences with VR, because people want to feel like they exist inside those worlds. So it makes a lot of sense. And you know, to your point earlier about Jurassic World, I think it's a perfect one. It's you know, it's one of the most well-known movie franchises out there, and it's super big. You know, there's, you know, movies on the horizon coming out still. It's got theme park rides. It's got, you know, like people know Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, like it's iconic. So it you know, I'm excited, and it's an interesting art style. I don't know if we've really talked about this before and on any of the download shows, but it has more of a cell shaded art style, which I think probably catches a lot of people off guard. You think of dinosaurs, you think of Jurassic World, you think of like gritty, you know, almost kind of gory, realistic sort of, you know, setting. So it's interesting they went with the cell shaded art style.
Yeah, for sure. That's this is being made by Coatsink, the guys that did like Esper, and they helped out with the recent port of Onward. And actually, that's a great one to point out, that they worked with Onward, which was this hyper technical, hyper realistic shooter, brought it to Quest. Obviously, ran into a couple of technical difficulties there. So I do think this represents a kind of more smarter Quest first approach, let's say. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to
Quest first approach. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think, you know, there's more to talk about there in terms of, because I mean, like, obviously there's so many Star Wars games now in VR and everything. I think there is more to talk about there about the way the software ecosystem in VR is expanding. But we'll have to save that for another time, because we have our own big topic to talk about this week. But before we get to that, we're going to move on to talk about Quest 2 Elite strap orders. Now, this is not quite gaming, but it's pretty relevant to everyone that bought a Quest 2 to play lots of video games. You might have seen in the past couple of weeks that some people on Reddit, that Quest 2 Elite strap not working out so well for them. We're seeing a lot of pictures of like what might start as like a hairline fracture, actually leading into like this giant crack in the headset strap. Got an image up here on if you're watching along with us. So that's just a full-on break through one of the side plastic straps that connects to the side of the Quest 2. And then earlier in the week, or it might have been late last week, David, as someone that's actually got the Elite strap pre-ordered, got an email saying that what happened. What did it say? Was it canceling the pre-order, or talk us through that?
While I'm kind of talking real quick, I'll pull it up so I can read it verbatim and not misquote anything here. But essentially what it said is that they're going to be pausing shipments until they can kind of investigate this more thoroughly and figure out what exactly is going on. The exact phrasing was, let's see here. We are reaching out to inform you that we won't be able to ship your Quest 2 Elite strap, a battery and carrying case by the estimated ship date. We're investigating quality reports. We believe it's a very small percentage of Elite strap accessories, etc. So we have temporarily paused shipping inventory from our distribution centers. And it then goes on to say that the law requires that we automatically cancel your order and issue you a refund unless we hear from you by December 8th. So I can reach out to confirm that I would like to keep my pre-order with some distant, vague, non-determined shipment date, or if I don't reach out, it will automatically cancel and get a refund. So that's kind of the position they're in with this.
And before we've talked to Facebook about this before, and they've said that it is a small number of units that are being affected. It is not a wide-reaching. I've personally had the Elite strap and the Elite battery strap since anywhere from early September to mid-October for the both of them.
There's your face.
Yeah, there's me wearing it, and as you can see, I promise you, my hair is not covering up any cracks in the in the
that's
strap.
very strategically placed hair there, Jamie.
Doing
I don't
great
know.
doing great advertising, doing great modeling for the Quest 2 there. I like both of these straps, and I think it's a shame this is happening because I do think they're pretty essential add-ons for the Quest 2 experience. I hate the soft strap it comes with. I think the thing's a nightmare. I totally get why they did it because they're trying to drive the price down in any way they can. But I've switched out to a Frankenquest now. I wear the Vive Deluxe audio strap. I got some 3D printed clips for that, and I find it much more comfortable. But I do think this is a real shame because it makes the Quest 2 much more accessible, and much more comfortable at the end of the day, right? And means you can play VR for longer. There's me modeling yet again with my Frankenquest this
notice
time.
how there's no hair covering the apparent crack in the strap in this photo here.
I didn't need it. That's why. I could just tame it all this time. And there may also be differences in lockdown hair length. I don't know at play that might.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think I've maybe shaved like 4 times since this whole thing started. And I can tell you that my wife is not a fan. It's it's getting to be a little bit of a problem. She's not a fan of the scraggly, hairy face at all.
So back on the Elite Strat thing, what do you think is going to happen here? It's a real shame because I feel like between this and the kind of fallout with Facebook account requirement and a select number of users having problems accessing their Quest at the start of the product's life cycle. I think it's not poured cold water on the Quest because clearly, we also heard that the thing's sold 5 times as many pre-orders, so clearly doing very, very well. But I didn't expect this from Facebook, right? I would have expected quality checks that resulted in this. Then again, they also used to put secret messages inside Oculus Touch controllers, and those got shipped out. So.
Yeah, I mean, didn't the Rift S cable have issues too? Like, it seems like there's a history of some type of manufacturing problem. And then the original Rift, there were component shortages, and
that's a good point.
So I mean, it's interesting because I don't feel like the Go or the Quest 1 really had any type of issues manufacturing wise. Other than the Quest just being hard to get, it was just difficult to find one. But quality wise, it seems like it was not really much of an issue. So I mean, if there is going to be an issue, I mean, I think it's better that it's an accessory than it is the actual headset.
Yep.
This is something that is optional, and if it does break, you can get a refund, you can get a new one while continuing to use your headset. Which is, a good thing. So I think they kind of dodged a bullet a little bit there. And I wonder if maybe they, I don't want to put this conspiracy out there too much, but maybe they wanted to have this be the strap on the headset, but realized there might be some concerns with it. So that's why they didn't have it as the default. Do you think that's a chance at all?
Maybe, but I just feel like the story, you pointed to all those other issues. The story behind almost every Oculus headset we've seen has been about driving the cost down, right? And in so many ways, they are successful at it. And in so many different ways, they do these cool innovations that actually really work out for them. But I guess if you're doing all these kinds of things at once, something's going to give. And eventually you are going to find, okay, maybe we did cut back a bit too much there, or maybe in terms of the design, we could have strengthened this one up a bit more because clearly our stress testing hasn't been as rigorous as as thorough as what some of these other consumers are putting it through. Although having said that, there was a YouTube video earlier this week from a YouTuber that put the thing through its paces himself, and he had no problem with it. He was bending it and pulling it and twisting it in all kinds of weird directions, and it seemed to work out for him. So it's possible that there's, and I'm talking completely speculatively here. It's possible there's like a production run that had a certain amount of issues that went unchecked. But I hope in the new year, maybe even before Christmas, they get this sorted and we can get these back out to people because, especially, you know, with Christmas Day coming up, lots of people are going to put on the Quest 2, and many of them are probably going to be like, well, this thing's kind of uncomfortable, right? And it would be good if under the tree they could also have that to remedy that issue there and then.
Yeah, I would like one.
should have put that pre-order in earlier.
Yeah. Oh well. I mean, I put it in like I felt like I put it in pretty early. I don't know.
Mm.
I received my VR cover on launch, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see how that works out. I'm hoping for good things. Facebook, you have our blessing to proceed with all the kinds of dangerous experimentation that you might need to do to get this thing back to people in times of Christmas, whatever that may. By the way, if you're hearing explosions outside my from my microphone right now, I'm okay. I'm fine. It is fireworks night in the UK, so there's a lot of noise a couple of meters away from me. Moving on, then, last item of the week in terms of news. We have collaboration with Oculus. I think it's being streamed in venues. So that's the link there, which means it definitely means that panel. Well, it doesn't definitely mean, but it's very likely that means that at least a section of that panel is going to be devoted to VR in some way, right? Like Facebook is not going to partner with VentureBeat and then be like, yeah, but don't talk about VR in the future of gaming section because Facebook would like us all to believe that is the future of gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if not the entire panel, the vast majority will be about VR because you've also got, I think the chief product officer from Survios is on the panel.
Mm-hmm.
It's very clearly a VR panel, I think, and I'm wondering, you know, I'm not sure if it's going to be like a VR fighting game, you know, necessarily. But I did kind of allude to this in the article I wrote about the announcement. Survios obviously has Creed Rise to Glory. You know, that's a VR fighting game. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of partnership going on where they might try to, you know, bring over characters or do a crossover or an adaptation or something like that. Because if it does happen, though, what I want to point out is there needs to be amazing fatalities.
Well, so this is what I want. I want just every Mortal Kombat fatality ever. Just you do the realistic action in VR. There's no other game to it. It's literally just like what the like 600 incredibly gruesome deaths in the past, and you literally just get to do them all, like the proper like punch through the stomachs and the head rips and all that jazz.
Oh man.
I think that would be a great way to, you know, kind of kickstart the conversation about VR.
Yeah, because I mean, you could take, you know, Survios' experience with the fighting mechanics from Creed with their experience with gore from Walking Dead, and marry that together. And let me rip a spine out. You know, I want to be Scorpion. I want to reach down the throat and pull all. I need it, Jamie. I need to do it.
Don't partner with Survios. Partner with an enterprise level surgeon training company, like Fundamental VR or something, and make it an entirely
anatomically correct fatalities.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you rip the spine out, it comes out all mangled, and they're like, "No, you didn't do it right." Like you have to go back, grab the spine from the bottom. And then, you know, really rip right here. And it's got like full haptic supports, so like every notch of the spine is like vibrating the controller as you're putting it along.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I'm a twisted human being, I've just realized.
That is. Yeah. I mean, I think we made jokes about Manhunt VR, but Mortal Kombat Fatality VR would be a whole other level. Oh, my gosh.
So that's when I don't have it down in my notes. Do you know when that panel is? Is that before the end of the year, or is that in the new year? Or
oh no, yeah, I think it's next Wednesday.
Oh, it's next Wednesday. Okay, well, look forward to that one then.
Yeah,
They're
doing one panel a month next Wednesday, and then another one in December, one in January, one in February. But none of the others are about games.
Very cool. Looking forward to that. So that's it for the news this week. Heavy week to talk about. Glad we got through it alive. I was worried for a second there. I thought that might be it. The next one we might not get through alive if David breaks an embargo, but I'm pretty sure he won't break an embargo because he's very good at that. We're going to talk about. Yeah, I don't think you've ever done that, so I'm steadfast in my assumption here. We're going to talk about PS5 and VR, which we talked about a little bit last week, but we had to talk about kind of conservatively because we had some things that we hadn't confirmed yet, and now some things that have come to light in the last week. David, we can't review the console yet. It's under embargo. David will be reviewing it shortly. But what's come to light in the past week is a story we've been chasing for some time, that PS4 games that are also coming to PlayStation 5 and are natively run on PlayStation 5, so Hitman 3 and No Man's Sky, which both have PSVR support on PS4, the PSVR support won't be available in those native PS5 versions, which we had confirmed to us last Friday, I think. And it was, for me, was the final nail in the coffin of not my long-term PlayStation 5 VR hopes, but definitely my launch PlayStation VR hopes. I think, what a shame. So what we're going to be getting is backwards compatibility on day one, right? Provided you have this adapter, which you have to apply for in kind of a weird way. David, what's your take? Because I could talk about this all day, but I want to know what you think first.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no way to describe it other than disappointing, and I think maybe it's part of the disappointment is our fault for assuming it would be any different. I think prior to what I'm going to say is I think prior to very recently, there seemed to be indication that PSVR support was going to be more than just backwards compatibility. And they never said that there are new PS5 games in development that will support PSVR, but they certainly had some allusions that implied there would be a longer term support for the headset. Beyond just backwards compatibility. And it's kind of a twofold issue here because on the one hand, new PS5 games are not going to support PSVR, meaning if the game doesn't have a cross-gen launch, it won't have VR support. So that raises the question, right, of Resident Evil 8. That game's not coming to PS4. It's PS5 only. So I guess that means there's no VR support. Maybe when PSVR 2 comes out, if it comes out in 2-3 years, maybe it'll retroactively give VR to Resident Evil 8, or maybe Resident Evil 8 just is never going to have VR. I mean, we don't know the answers to these questions right now. That's the issue that this brings. And then the other side of it is Sony has talked about game boost, air quotes right here. But they've only announced 3 games that get boosted. They've announced Ghost of Tsushima, Days Gone, and God of War. Those are the only games that are confirmed to have boosted performance on PS5. And no PSVR games have been confirmed.
And what those look like is, let's say God of War is one of them, like you said. On PlayStation 4 Pro, God of War had a performance mode that kind of unlocked the frame rate. And it would do as good a frame rate as the console could handle in the given scene. So sometimes it would probably be in 30 in very intense action sequences, and then other times it would try and reach up to 60, but probably not get there. But because the PS5 is a more powerful console, we're assuming that it will hit 60 a bit more regularly. But the other side to it is that the EA put out a list today of backwards compatible games on both new consoles. And of course, if you've been following Xbox, you know that upgrading old Xbox titles to take advantage of Xbox One Series X is much more robust, much more like Gears 5 has better textures, 4K, much more robust 4K support.
I would go so far as to say that from what I've read and what I've seen, like Digital Foundry coverage and videos and stuff like that, like if you, even if there aren't any official updates, if you put an original Xbox disc, 360, Xbox One, any of those older Xbox games, if they work on your Series X and you put them in the console, it's almost like it automatically remasters them in a way. Like they look and play better just automatically. And the PS5, from what we've seen and heard, it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. It seems more like you put the PS4 disc in, and it's like you're playing it on a PS4 Pro.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the EA blog
sounds
said.
like.
That's exactly what every game listed in the EA blog said. For Squadrons, for Jedi Fallen Order, for the upcoming Hot Pursuit remaster, they say the game will play as if it was running on a PS4 Pro. So that's one thing, and in terms of flat screen gaming, it's a missed opportunity. For me personally, in terms of VR, it is a huge blow, because the PS4 right from day one for PSVR was an underpowered VR gaming machine. Every port PC that came to PSVR had to go through a lot of work. If you take something like Arizona Sunshine, there's huge visual downgrades there. If you take something like even Skyrim, which came to PSVR first, the game probably actually looks a little worse than it did when it first released on PS3, as opposed to on PC, where it kind of like finally steps up to the full potential of everything, right? The idea that you could have just plugged any or put in any PSVR disc or downloaded any PSVR game, and the developer could have, let's say Arizona Sunshine could have suddenly put the PC spec in there, would have been so hugely enticing for VR gamers from day one. And for developers too, I think a lot of developers would feel like, a weight was off their shoulders if the guys from Arizona Sunshine could say, okay, we no longer have to deal with this really limited PS4 spec. We can finally bump these things up and actually start treating PS5 development like PC VR development. That would be huge. But instead, we've got this strange, antiquated, backwards approach that I just don't know why they've made these decisions, because these seem to be very aggressive anti-consumer decisions. I don't know the reason why you would look at it and say, okay, let's not have the new PS5 camera work with PSVR. What? Even if you ended up with the hardware that for some reason physically can't support tracking on PSVR, why did you make that decision in the first place when you were writing out the blueprints for this thing, right? Like, that must have been a given. That must have been a given.
The camera is a very confusing decision, because it's a 3D camera. It's stereoscopic. It's got two lenses in there. So I don't understand the reasoning. And then on the console itself, there's only 3 USB ports. And then to use your PS4 camera, you have to get an adapter that converts it to a USB plug. So now you need 2 dedicated USB plugs just to use your PSVR. So you can only plug in and charge a single controller at a time, which, I mean, isn't that big of a deal. But it's like, I only have 1 USB port now. Like, I have to get a hub to extend it. I can't even plug in 2 Move controllers, at the same time to charge anymore. It's just like, I don't know. It's to me, like, everything that we've learned over the past week and a half has told me that PSVR seems like it's being supported retroactively. It was not something they even considered when they started designing the PS5, is what I think. I think it sold a little better than they thought it would, and they realized that there's more of an audience than they expected, so they should support it to tide people over until the next headset. That's kind of what I think happened. And just however the PS5 is architectured, I'm guessing the backwards compatibility functionality is almost more like an emulation in a way. It's not like natively, up-resing and bumping up these games performance-wise like a computer would. It's more like, oh yeah, you can play your PS4 games, put in the disc, download the game. Well, we'll run it in PS4 mode. It's not like, it doesn't seem to work like the Xbox does from what I've seen. And I don't know. It's a bit of a bummer. I'm kind of disappointed in what I've heard and what we confirmed. Especially the biggest one is whenever we were able to confirm, and I have a quote in my email, like it's there in plain text, that we have not announced plans for any PS5 games with VR support yet. That like, to me, that was such a gut punch.
Come with me on a journey. Maybe I want to say 2 years ago. So, mid PSVR life, things are looking good. We're getting games like Skyrim. We're getting games like Blood and Truth, Astrobot. Sony has a change in leadership. And this is all speculation, what I'm about to talk about here. Sony has a change in leadership. Andrew House, who has led PlayStation since the early PS4 days, maybe a bit before that, mid PS3 era. He took over from Kaz Hirai, specifically Sony's PlayStation division.
Can we just talk about how much of a charming fellow Mr. House is?
Oh, he was adorable. He was an adorable Sony Interactive CEO. I loved him. And he spoke very fluent Japanese. He was a very impressive human being. He left. And taking over was Jim Ryan, also from Sony UK. At the same time that Sean Layden, who was president of PlayStation in the US, left. And again, all complete speculation, but to me, that said, okay, you had these two people vying for the top spot, two people with very different visions of where the next generation was going to take PlayStation. The wider Sony Corp decided to go with one vision. Again, complete speculation, but there was a lot of those things happened very quickly together, those two events, I believe. And then actually a lot of Sony layoffs followed after that as well. So it seemed like that.
Also, I don't think it's a coincidence that Shuhei Yoshida has kind of had a change in
roles.
He's
like an indie guy now, right?
Yeah.
He's head of like the indie
and
production.
He was a huge proponent of PSVR.
Yeah. Yeah,
probably
exactly.
like one of the most vocal people at the entire company. And so go on with your story time here. Sorry.
So we have that. And then you take it forward to, I think, around like May, March this year. Sony closed down the Northwest studio in the UK, which was only open about 3 or 4 years ago and had for years been hiring and teasing a AAA
specifically
VR title. Yeah, they were a VR dedicated studio. They got shut down completely. All the staff that they'd just been hiring said that,
were
on Twitter, it came
or
out
anyone
of the blue.
we know ever able to talk to any of those developers? Were we able to ever get any?
I have tried. Believe me, I have tried.
Yeah.
I imagine Sony throws down quite a lot of scary threats when you're closing down a studio and cancelling a game that hasn't been announced. So that again was like a moment. And also Richard Marks, who was one of the head of R&D that was so into PSVR development,
what was the name of
Google.
So what was the name of his lab or whatever? It was
PlayStation Magic Lab, I believe.
What was it called?
Was it Magic Lab or Reality Lab?
That's right.
Yeah. So you have this string of events, and then of course you have Jim Ryan's quotes, which I know some people think he wasn't specifically talking about PSVR 2. He's the head of PlayStation. If he says the future of VR won't arrive next year, fairly sure he's trying to tell everyone that Sony is not going to do anything in VR for the next year.
Also, let's not forget, before he even took over, I believe he was on record as saying, like, thinking out loud. I think I can't remember if it was an interview or an event or somewhere where he said something along the lines of, why would anyone want to play this game? It looks like crap nowadays. I think he was talking about Gran Turismo. Yeah. He was like, he just couldn't comprehend someone wanting to revisit an older game.
Yep. And there's also, going back even further than that, this is really, really old. I think back in 2014, as PlayStation VR was revealed as Project Morpheus, he said in a interview somewhere, like, every other Sony executive talking very positively about this thing, he said, like, just so you know, this is still much an R&D project. We haven't actually decided if we're releasing this thing yet. And I remember reading that back in 2014 when I was working for another VR website, like, whoa, this guy does not seem to... I'm getting too deep into my theory because for all I don't know Jim Ryan. For all I know, he loves VR and he's just being very conservative and for very good reasons. But you string all of these together, I still believe PSVR 2 will happen, but it's just this crushing cooling off period right now, which I really don't think the ecosystem needed. I think, there's Jim on the screen. Hello, Jim. Looking right at me. He's not happy with my comments.
Hello, Jimbo.
And it's hard, man, because this could have been a really, really exciting, excellent year. We could have got a version of Iron Man with incredible graphics and incredible load times as opposed to the PS4 version. It seems to be begging for that. We could have got a new first-party game from this new studio. We could have presumably seen something new from Sony London Studio, the developers of Blood and Truth. Clearly, Sony Japan has been working on Astrobot, the launch title, not Astrobot 2 right now. I mean, they might have that working away somewhere in the background. And they
Impulse Gear, the creators of Farpoint.
They haven't been seen since 2017. This has really taken the wind out of a lot of people's sails, and I'll say it's an especially crucial time for this not to have happened, because Quest 2 has come out and the Facebook thing is an issue for people, right? And we talk about this industry needing competition on a grand scale, and PlayStation was the only company right now that looks like it's going to be offering that in the near term, apart from maybe if there's something that Apple does next year or the year after, or if Microsoft finally decides to get in the game, or Google comes back or whatever. But those things don't look as likely as what PlayStation could have done. Yeah, and it's so I'm crushed. Personally, I love PlayStation VR. It's dated, the hardware's dated, but I love it.
It's such a frustrating thing to even talk about because there's just so many question marks, like we don't really know, for sure if PSVR 2 is definitely coming, because they haven't declared it, they haven't announced the headset, they haven't, said anything that gives consumers confidence. And I think that's the key thing here, is that as you go into a new generation of hardware, clearly Sony is very firmly entrenched in that belief of generation, right? Like that the PS5 is a new console, a new generation. We have reluctant backwards compatibility with PS4, but if you want anything else, you're going to have to pay us for PS Now to stream it. So PS5 is a new generation of hardware, and they're very firmly believe in that kind of concept. And so even if PSVR 2 is a year and a half to 2 years away, I would like to know that it's coming.
Exactly.
Knowing that it's coming isn't going to hurt sales of PS4 or PSVR. I think most people that want a PSVR probably have one already. I think that if you were to announce that it's coming, that would have the opposite effect. That would build confidence. That would make people buy a PS5 now to get into the ecosystem and get used to it, and maybe play some PS4 VR games while they're getting used to the ecosystem. And I don't understand the reasoning of why they wouldn't at least confirm that one is coming for sure. It's in development. Even if they don't say anything else, literally nothing else, that you don't even have to name it. You can just come out in an interview and say, yes, a new headset is in development. It'll be coming out. And, you don't even have to give us a time frame even. Like, literally the confirmation it exists would be, I think, it would be just enough to tide over the fan base, because there are, we don't know the exact number at this point, but probably close to 6 million PSVR headsets out there. That's a drop in the bucket of the PS4 user base, but that's still a sizable audience, and it kind of feels like they're being left out to dry. And I don't know, maybe if we go back in time again to sort of talk about when the PSVR first came out, maybe we can kind of look at what happened, and we should have been more pessimistic. The fact that they were using PS3 technology to power the device. I mean, that was kind of writing on the wall ahead of time already. I don't know. I mean, they kind of put themselves into a corner a little bit here, where a refresh mid-cycle would have been tantamount to a new device, because of how dated it was whenever it debuted in the first place. So they were kind of in this position where either they're just going to have to, just tough through a drought, or launch a new device early. And it seems like they picked the former, which I don't know. I mean, it's fine. I think whenever the new headset gets announced and comes out, I think it'll be popular. I do think there will be an audience for it again, but just a statement could have done so much for the the brand awareness and confidence in the player base. And that's all they really needed to do as a bare minimum. I think that would have been enough.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's plenty more I want to say, but I actually think we should table it, because in a future episode of the podcast, we're going to be able to talk about this stuff embargo free, right? And that is the time to really probably dig in and talk about PS5 and VR. So I think we should leave it there, even though I'm going to make notes, and I think we'll revisit this topic in the coming weeks. That's it for the show today, pretty much. Thanks so much for joining in, everyone. This is, like we said, this is the first in our new kind of setup where we're going to be talking games on the download on Thursday, and on Monday we're going to be talking hardware and industry, different people on different podcasts, covering a broader spectrum. So that's really exciting. Before we head off, David, what do we got coming up? We've been talking PS5, so there's some coverage from that to expect, right?
Yeah, you should keep an eye on the site tomorrow morning for sure if you are interested in PS5 and PSVR. There's going to be quite a bit of stuff going up on the site tomorrow morning. And beyond that, we obviously are going to continue, reviewing on the latest games and all the latest VR experiences out there, and chasing down stories as much as we can. And I think in your neck of the woods, you have a piece of hardware that should be arriving relatively soon, right?
Yeah. So I should be doing the review for the HP Reverb G2, which I'm hoping will be arriving in the next couple of days. Should be arriving in the next couple of days, I should say. So if you looked at our Quest 2 review from back in September, expect the same kind of coverage. We'll be going really in depth with it, getting to grips with how it feels, what games play like on it. We'll be doing video reviews, video comparisons. It's going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to trying that thing out and getting back to some high-end VR after all the Quest 2 stuff recently. So it's going to be good stuff. Make sure to stay tuned to upload. Make sure to head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Click that link down below somewhere. Oh, look at that. How's that for synergy? And we'll see you Monday. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.